What have we here, laddie? Mysterious scribblings? A secret code? No.
Well, how you doing, folks? Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to my live stream. Welcome. Good morning. It is August 15, 2018. I am in California. Welcome from California. It is 9:44 in the a.m. Pacific Standard Time. My name is Andre Lefevre. I am a citizen journalist, extreme libertarian, and like to mouth off on things political, things cultural, things interesting. And I have a full live stream for us today, so stick with me. So let's get straight into it. The first story, hit something else on my screen, is from Washington Times. Christian Baker vindicated by Supreme Court is back in court for not baking a gender transition cake. If you remember, a few years back under the Obama regime, this baker refused to bake a gay wedding cake and was basically driven out of society, out of business. I think he was forced to go virtually bankrupt. Was vindicated by the Supreme Court, but he believes in his values. So let me read the story in the Washington Times. The Christian baker who refused to bake a wedding cake for a same-sex couple and was vindicated by the Supreme Court earlier this year is mounting another legal challenge this week after refusing to bake a gender transitioning cake. A gender transitioning cake. So basically, you have people who suffer from gender dysphoria, a mental disease, think that we should acquiesce to them. Shortly after the Supreme Court ruled in June that the Colorado Civil Rights Commission discriminated against Baker Jack Phillips for his religious beliefs, an attorney requested he create a cake that was pink on the side and the blue on the inside to represent gender transition, male to female. As a Christian, Mr. Phillips would not make the cake since it conflicts with his beliefs, which was the same reasoning for refusing the same-sex couple wedding cake. The state of Colorado has come after Mr. Phillips again, suggesting state law requires him to bake the gender change cake. Let's see if there's any more to this. Let's see. But I think you get the idea. You get the idea. More power to that man. I think this is what he looks like. This is the fascist Democrat Party, a straight descendant of the National Socialist Party of Germany. They are the straight ideological descendants of the Nazis. Next story. How about InfoWars? Alex Jones suspended from Twitter after a tweet calling to end censorship. The corporate fascists of the Democrat Party are after him because they don't control him. They're also after us. And I'll tell you about what's happening to me and my YouTube channel a little later. Controversial right-wing commentator Alex Jones has been banned from tweeting after he posted a link to a video of himself calling President Trump to take action against tech companies censoring his comment. InfoWars editor Paul Joseph Watson tweeted a screenshot of the notification sent by Twitter staff to Jones. According to Twitter, a tweet by Jones only one day earlier was considered to be targeted harassment. As a result, the InfoWars would not have his access to social media platform restricted for 1 week. Watson described the situation as truly monumentally beyond stupid. I don't think you have to be a genius to understand what's going on. Intercept.com recently published an article showing that Google is very deep into Chinese politics. They are have a huge contract creating a censorship search engine for the Chinese. And it doesn't take a genius to realize that the orders now come from China. And the idea of censoring anybody is so un-American, is so foreign to our culture, to imagine that any executive that grew up in the United States, that believes in American values, we think it's okay to censor somebody, is beyond belief. Started with Google, and it started with Facebook, who are neck deep with Chinese. I don't think Twitter is, but I think Twitter is just was it Jack Dorsey is under pressure. Remember, this is an attack on our way of life. It doesn't matter that you don't like Alex Jones. If it doesn't matter if you disagree with him, who fucking cares? Don't watch him. And the whole idea that you put your nose into your neighbor's business is un-American. Truly, truly un-American. Before the end of this live stream, I'm going to call the White House and urge Donald Trump to start antitrust proceedings against Google, to break them up into 1,000 antitrust pieces. We need to regulate them. And I know as a libertarian, the word regulation is an anathema. But what's next? We won't be able to talk freely on the cell phones? It's coming. It's coming. And to me, the regulation and breaking up Google and turning them into utilities is just a tool. It's just a tool to be adjusted later when this danger has passed. Next story. This is from Washington Times. Feds say restricting DACA will delay benefits for legal immigrants. I'm not going to bore you to reading the whole story, but this is attack by the Democratic Party to legalize as many illegals as they can so they can vote them. Remember, illegal immigrants, even legalized ones, do not vote as free-thinking citizens. They're being voted by the Democrats. Also, when we talk about DACA, we're not talking about cuddly little babies that were brought here as infants. And no, we're talking about MS-13. We're talking about people that commit heinous crimes. We talk about people that do not bring anything positive to America. On the other hand, they drain our resources and they kill, maim, and rape American citizens. Us. Just think about Kate Stanley. In a related story, CDC monitoring measles outbreak in 21 states, including North Carolina. I will bet you, and I haven't done that, if you correlate the states where you have the measles outbreak, you'll see the recent influx of illegal immigrants. Those two are always related. Since they're not screened at the border, they bring not only the crime, poverty, and foreign ideas to our country, they also bring diseases. And it's not a joke. Next story. Mueller, this is from Bloomberg. Mueller probe seen pushing past Trump demanded September 1 deadline. And let me read a paragraph or two. Bloomberg, Special Counsel Robert Mueller doesn't have to shut down his Russia investigation in the weeks before November's congressional elections, despite claims by President Donald Trump lawyers that he faces September 1 deadline, according to current and former U.S. officials. All right, let me translate this into English. The swamp creatures in Washington, D.C. need to get rid of Donald Trump for their own survival. Otherwise, he's going to get rid of them. Washington, D.C. is playing by the swamp rules. You always have to translate. The whole idea of Robert Mueller's probe is to create a situation politically where Donald Trump is impeached and then convicted by the Senate. This is his only purpose, to create a situation where Donald Trump is removed because he is an implicit and explicit threat to the swamp creatures, to the ruling class, i.e. Democrat Party, really, to the Nazi Democrat Party in Washington, D.C. So whatever they can, they will do whatever they can to remove him. This is the legal way they're trying to remove him. This is the legal way they're trying to remove him. The more radical wing of the Democratic Party, such as Antifa, MS-13, and the Muslims, especially the ones that are resettled occupied, I should say, the ones that occupied portions of Minnesota under the guise of refugee resettlement, they would be trying to remove them by extra legal ways. Speaking of the Muslims, this is Daily Caller. The DNC finally breaks silence on Keith Ellison's domestic abuse allegations. Here's what it said. And if you remember, Keith Ellison, who is a Muslim from Minnesota, was accused by his girlfriend by abusing her terribly. The ex-girlfriend's son apparently found a horrific video of him beating up on his mother. This scandal started on, I think, on Friday or Saturday. But here's what, according to Daily Caller, that's what DNC is saying. The DNC is reviewing domestic abuse allegation against Minnesota Representative and Deputy DNC Chairman Keith Ellison. Ellison is accused of abusing his ex-girlfriend, Sierra Club activist Karen Monahan. The DNC should have suspended Ellison at a minimum, according to the former DNC communications director. Remember, the Minnesota Muslims are being voted by Democrats. And it's very difficult for the Democratic Party to do anything about Keith Ellison because he controls a lot of those votes. This is Star Tribune. Historic mark with primary win, and this is worth reading. Minnesota Republican Aynan Omar Center celebrates with her children after her congressional 5th District primary win Tuesday, August 14, 2019 in Minneapolis. The nation's first Somali American state legislature is poised to act the same historic mark in Congress after winning a crowded Democratic primary in Minnesota to replace Keith Ellison. Now, Minnesota, portions of it are occupied, and I'm choosing my words carefully. Minnesota is occupied, portions of it is, by Islamic invaders, primarily from Somalia. They, of course, the corporate controlled media and the Democratic Party calls them refugees. I want to play you a portion of the report done by Laura Loomer, and I urge you to go at Laura Loomer, but this is fair use, just portion of her report of what's really going on in Minnesota and what the Muslim invaders do to this beautiful American state. It's not that beautiful anymore. So fair use, listen up.
Thanks so much to the Catholic Charities, Lutheran Brotherhood, Lutheran Social Services.
And the Jewish community here is not even standing with the Jews who are speaking out against the anti-Semitism and Jew hatred that's being committed by the Muslim community. Last week, the synagogue even hosted, you can talk about that as well, a story that I broke about how one of the synagogues here in Minneapolis was hosting with 4 Jewish organization Ilan Omar, who called the Jews and Israelis evil.
Yeah.
This is the lady who is going to be in U.S. Congress, by the way.
May the world, Allah awaken the world to the evil doings of Israel, or some horrible tweet like that. They had her on the bima at the synagogue. And I always used to feel safe in a synagogue. This is where we go to pray, and we actually have holidays that celebrate the vanquishing of the enemies who tried to kill us. Have we not learned our lesson? How long ago was it the Holocaust? Not very long ago. and yet they gave a platform to a woman who was clearly a Jew hater. It made me sick to my stomach. But that's what we're dealing with here.
And then they mocked me. Keith Ellison's former press secretary, I think his name is Issy Breen, he said, imagine thinking that Jewish Republicans even matter. He took an excerpt from my article in which which Marnie herself, who, if you're not following Marnie Hockenberg, you should. She's on Twitter. You can follow her. I retweet her all the time. And she brings a lot of this to light. But he literally took a passage out of my article in which we were talking about the Republican Jewish coalition of Jews here in Minnesota. And he was like, oh, imagine thinking that Republican Jews matter. I mean, this is a guy who served as the press secretary for Keith Ellison, the first Muslim ever elected to the United States Congress who is Sharia compliant. Oh, and by the way, today has been accused of committing battery against a woman, something that is completely permissible in the Quran. So, I mean, you shouldn't be surprised to hear this stuff. And the media is protecting them. They're protecting Keith Ellison. They're protecting Ilhan Omar. And it's egregious. And the Jewish organizations told me that, they weren't going to speak out about it. I sent them screenshots of Ilhan's anti-Jewish tweets and told them how members of the Jewish community were outraged about their platform of anti-Semitism and Jew hatred, and they just wouldn't do anything. They mocked me. And meanwhile, there are people who are literally getting stabbed in the streets of Minnesota, and the media is covering it up.
And shot.
They're getting shot.
An Australian
They're getting an Australian woman was shot by a Sharia-compliant Somalian immigrant police officer who was appointed for the sake of diversity because there weren't any Somalian immigrant police officers. And he saw this Australian lady in her pajamas, unarmed, and he shot and killed her in the name of Islam. And now he's been charged with murder. And the media is just conveniently brushed.
A little bit. That was an atrocious crime. And I hope that
has come here to help us get the word out here, and hopefully the people that are watching can help us and do some research and tweet it out and get educated, because it's coming to your city too, if you haven't already seen this.
And Rashida assaulted me, all right? I mean, if I were to assault a Muslim congresswoman...
Let me see if there's anything more of this. I really suggest go to Laura Loomer.
But they won't arrest him for being misbehaving. They just try to escort him.
Let's go on, but I really suggest you go to Laura Loomer.
All right, well.
And let me close this. Go at Laura Loomer on Periscope and watch her full report. It is horrifying. It's about an hour long, and I strongly recommend it. Now, talking about Muslims in America, I found this gem done by Sean Hannity. It was published on September 23, 2015. I'm going to play a few minutes of this. Fair use, even though it's old, it's really, really relevant. So listen up.
Carson expressing concern about a Muslim becoming president of the United States. Well, we decided to launch a special Hannity investigation to find out if American Muslims think that Sharia law should supersede the U.S. Constitution. Earlier today, we sent out Fox News contributor David Webb to an Islamic cultural center in New York City. Now watch this closely.
Your thoughts, should Sharia law supersede the U.S. Constitution?
No, but I think the Sharia law is made by God, by Allah, and the Constitution is made by people. So it's not the same.
Do you believe that Sharia law should be above the U.S. Constitution?
Yes. Yes.
Sharia law is completely different than the United States Constitution. As a Muslim, you practice my Islamic law. As a Muslim, United States Constitution, as a citizen, I have to respect the Constitution. Nothing to do with Sharia law. It's a Muslim country, Sharia law is allowed. Other country, no. You have to have a right Constitution.
Should any religious law supersede the U.S. Constitution at any time? Any denomination?
Maybe in the future.
U.S. Constitution deserve all the people living in U.S. their rights, right? So Sharia law does not contradict with this. Sharia law just protect our dignified. We are like human being, be respectful, to be respected in the society.
So you think that the U.S. Constitution should be the law of the land in the U.S.?
Also helpful to protect our Sharia.
Should Sharia law be over the U.S. Constitution?
Yes, maybe. Every country have a different policy and different law.
All right, so as you can see, if that doesn't scare you, I don't know what would. It is obvious that American Muslims, and that's Mr. Webb was interviewing them 3 years ago. It looks like all of them think that Sharia law is far more important than American Constitution, and Minnesota is under occupation, at least portions of it, out of people who believe that. We're changing gears a little bit. Next story. This is from Pointer. Let me scroll down a little bit. 200 plus newspapers will write pro-journalism editorials. Will they also listen? And let me read a couple of paragraphs. On Thursday, more than 200 newspapers will publish editorials in a coordinated response to President Trump calling the press the enemy of the people. Each publication will write its own editorial. Keep in mind that President Trump called corporate-controlled Democrat Nazi press enemy of the people, which they are. Right off the top, let me say that I wish the president would knock off with the fake news is the enemy of the people nonsense. It is unpresidential, unproductive, and untrue. And if you agree with him, I just said will ricochet off your eyeballs and never enter your brain. All right, so it gives you an idea of what liberals think. They don't think much of us, people who actually use our brains. It is very clear to anybody who uses his gray matter that corporate-controlled media is just a propaganda arm of the Democratic Party that are the direct descendants of the National Socialist Party, ideologically direct descendants of Germany. They are true Nazis. Democrats have always believed in separating races. Segregation was before the civil rights era, then the fake civil rights. Thank God there were enough Republicans to pass civil rights law. Without them, a Civil Rights Act would never have been passed. So the Democrats are trying to circumvent it by creating safe spaces and other nonsense on college campuses. They're also bringing in hundreds of thousands and millions of people into the United States to supplant us, and all of them are different in their culture, in their ethnic group, to supplant us, the American middle class. Now, obviously, the corporate-controlled media is on its last legs if they have to actually coordinate and write coordinated editorials to prove to us that they're relevant. Corporate control media only writes for Washington Swamp, for the power elite. The rest of us don't think much of it, and most of us don't even read them. We just get reports from the independent media, from the citizen journalists. That's how we get our news. The corporate control media as a news source is dead, or they are the propaganda machine, and they're echo chamber for the power elite. Moving on. Let's see. This one is from the Gateway Pundit, and this was actually historic. Donald Trump approval rating with blacks hits 31%, up 13 points in one year. That explains why corporate control media is pushing Omarosa story, is because with that kind of approval among the black voters, Democrat Party is destined to lose. Remember, the only way Democrats can win if they replace us with the illegal immigrants from the third world countries which don't hold our values, or through voter fraud. Next, here's another interesting story from Gateway Pundit. Another Trump basher goes down in flames. Tim Pawlenty fails in comeback bid for Minnesota governor. Thank God. Thank God. The Patriots flexed the muscles in Minnesota. Not all of it is occupied by Muslims. And so right through Tim Pawlenty's rhino desires. All right. I want to call the White House while I'm on a live stream and urge the president to start antitrust proceedings against Google, Facebook, and other monopolistic media platforms. So I'm dialing 202-456-1111, 202-456-1111. So let's see what happens.
Thank you for calling the White House comment line. If you're calling about White House tour information, press 1. If you're calling about presidential greetings, press 2. For the White House mailing address, press 3. To speak with the next available operator, please remain on the line. To hear these options again, please press the star key.
We are calling the White House to urge President...
All comment line volunteer operators are currently assisting other callers. Please continue to hold.
Yeah, we are on hold calling the White House to urge President Trump to start antitrust proceedings to break up Google and Facebook and Twitter. Alex Jones has been deplatformed, and that's intolerable. I'm not going to bore you with what Google is doing to my channel.
All comment line volunteer operators are currently assisting other callers. Please continue to hold.
I mean, it is obvious that the corporate elite is part of the Democratic Party. It's just part of the Democratic Party. And unfortunately for us, the Democratic Party has assumed the ideology of the Third Reich, of the National Socialist Party of Germany.
All comment line volunteer operators are currently assisting other callers. Please continue to hold.
They have the same economic plan, and they have the same eugenics ideas that racist, the superficial differences in our bodies are very important to them. They also have globalist ideas. They believe in open borders. They don't believe that the United States should exist as a country. Alex Jones was...
All comment line volunteer operators are currently assisting other callers. Please continue to hold.
Alex Jones is more influential than most of the corporate control media put together. So before the November elections, the Democratic Party just had to kick him off. Now, there are arguments that they're private companies, so Google, Twitter, Facebook, and that there is no... I mean, I'm a libertarian, so other libertarians argue that you can't argue that they should be...
All comment line volunteer operators are currently assisting other callers. Please continue to hold.
They argue that government has no business regulating private companies. What Google, Twitter, Google and Facebook and Twitter.
The White House comment line. May I please take your brief comment to the President?
Hello, my name is Andre Lefevre. I'm a citizen journalist, wildnews.us. I have to tell you, I'm live streaming this phone call on Periscope. What I'd like to see, I'd like to urge President Trump to start antitrust proceedings against Google, Twitter, and Facebook. They are monopolies. They were funded by the government to begin with, and they're beginning a severe censorship campaign against American citizens. And there are no alternatives to Google, no alternatives to Facebook. There's no alternative to Twitter. And I urge President Trump to order his Justice Department to start antitrust proceedings against them.
Okay, sir, I have your comment, and I will forward that into the office of the president for his review on your behalf.
Thank you so much.
And have a good day.
Have a blessed day yourself. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So that's my point. That's exactly. We left a message for the White House, and before I go, I'd like to play you a